The mop glided over the polished alloy floor, its reflection rippling beneath the overhead lights of the command deck. Marcus Hale moved with unhurried precision, his rhythm steady and deliberate, as though the quiet scrape of synthetic fibers against metal were a ritual. Around him, officers of at least 6 different species strode between consoles and holographic maps, voices layered in a chorus of mechanical and organic tones. None looked at him for more than a second. To them, he was part of the scenery, useful but invisible. A human janitor on the flagship Unity Dawn was hardly worth a second glance. Admiral Karthvun, a towering reptilian from the Rekthar Empire, paused to adjust his uniform clasps. His gold-plated scales shimmered under the lights, each movement calculated to display authority. When his gaze fell on Marcus, he smirked, the expression more a baring of teeth than amusement. "Primitive labor," he muttered to a nearby officer. "Humans always seem comfortable on their knees." Marcus didn't react. He dipped the mop into the pail, twisted, and resumed his quiet work. The floor, after all, didn't clean itself. "Do you understand me, janitor?" the Admiral pressed, voice rising with a kind of authority that demanded submission. "I do, sir," Marcus said, his tone mild. "Just trying not to interrupt official business." Karthvun's nostrils flared. Official business does not pause for your domestic rituals. Before the Admiral could continue, Captain Riggs emerged from the lift. The only other human aboard, Riggs was broad-shouldered, weary-eyed, and carried the confidence of someone who had survived too many campaigns. He glanced at Marcus and gave a curt nod. "Morning, Chief. Don't let the brass step in your bucket again." A few alien officers turned their heads, confused by the word. "Chief?" Surely that was a joke. Karthvun's smirk widened. "Chief of Sanitation, I presume?" Riggs's mouth twitched in something between amusement and warning. "Something like that, Admiral." He continued on toward the tactical stations, leaving Marcus to his mop and the growing echo of quiet laughter. Marcus wrung the mop once more, eyes fixed on the reflection in the floor, an upside-down world where admirals strutted and egos gleamed brighter than the stars outside. He caught sight of his own faint smile in the sheen and let it linger a moment before continuing his route toward the forward viewport. Through the glass, the galaxy burned in quiet majesty. The Unity Dawn floated between 2 nebulae, their colors bleeding like oil on water. Fleets of ships drifted nearby, each representing a different civilization: angular Rekthar destroyers, spindly Vashran cruisers, the bulbous orbs of Nakuan patrol craft. This alliance had taken decades to forge and still trembled under the weight of its own arrogance. Marcus knew. He'd seen it before. Empires called it cooperation. Soldiers called it a truce waiting to fail. A soft hum rose from his wrist as his maintenance pad blinked to life. To anyone watching, it was a standard inventory log, chemical ratios, deck assignments, cleaning rotations. But Marcus's eyes tracked the subtle layer beneath, visible only through a security cipher keyed to his biometrics. Diagnostic feeds streamed by in real time, power grid fluctuations, encrypted communications, security subroutines. He flicked through them idly, confirming everything was stable. The janitor's job was to notice what others ignored, and Marcus was very good at his job. An ensign brushed past, nearly knocking over the bucket. "Watch it, human," he snapped, then hesitated when Marcus gave him a small, patient look. The ensign muttered something in his native clicks and hurried away. It was always the same. To the aliens, humans were paradoxical, clever yet crude, innovative yet unsophisticated. They saw humanity as an upstart species that climbed too high too fast. Most couldn't fathom that one of them would choose such an unremarkable post aboard the most advanced vessel ever built. Marcus paused near the navigation console, mop resting on his shoulder. "Don't mind me," he said quietly as a pair of Rekthar technicians eyed him warily. "Just cleaning the universe one floor at a time." The taller one hissed in disdain. "Your species thrives on filth." "True," Marcus replied with a shrug. "But we're pretty good at cleaning up after it too." That earned a few chuckles from the nearby human crew, though they quickly hid their smiles under the weight of alien stares. Marcus gave a small, conspiratorial wink to one of them and moved on. When the ship's bell signaled the change of command rotation, the deck came alive with movement. Officers filed in, discussions of strategy and logistics flooding the air. Marcus retreated to the far corner, giving them space, though his ears remained open. He caught snippets of concern, border patrol failures, enemy incursions, whispers of the Zorathi swarm advancing toward the outer colonies. The words carried tension beneath their formal tone. Carthvun slammed his taloned hand against the console. The humans exaggerate. The swarm will not breach the core. Riggs's voice answered, calm but edged. That's what they said about Epsilon Prime before it was reduced to molten slag. Silence stretched. Marcus continued mopping, pretending not to listen. But inside, he catalogued every phrase, every pattern of doubt. The swarm had been humanity's nightmare long before the other races took it seriously. He'd faced them once, and the memory still lingered in the quiet hours between shifts. When the meeting adjourned, Carthvun and his entourage swept past, the Admiral's disdain trailing like perfume. As he passed Marcus, he gave a short, sharp laugh. I wonder, he said to no one in particular, if humans believe polishing floors will make them shine brighter among the stars. Marcus leaned on his mop. Depends, he said, voice low. Some stains don't come off easy. The Admiral stopped, eyes narrowing at the human's tone. For a moment, the bridge held its breath. Then Carthvun turned away, dismissing him with a flick of his claw. The officers followed, conversation resuming in clipped, superior tones. Riggs approached once they were gone. You're going to get yourself in trouble one of these days, Chief. Marcus shrugged. I'm already in trouble, Captain. Just depends on who notices. Riggs sighed but smiled faintly. Try not to start any wars before lunch. No promises, Marcus replied, dipping the mop back into the bucket. When the captain left, the bridge fell quiet again except for the whisper of the mop across metal. Marcus finished the last stretch of corridor, his reflection moving beside him in the gleaming floor. Outside the viewport, a cluster of distant ships drifted into formation, their engines pulsing like slow heartbeats. The Alliance fleet was gathering for something large, something desperate. Marcus straightened, resting the mop against the wall. For a long moment, he studied the stars, the light flickering across his eyes. The hum of the engines deepened, echoing through the hull like a heartbeat of steel. He exhaled softly. Always cleaning up after someone else's mess, he murmured. Then he picked up his bucket and walked toward the lift, leaving behind a spotless deck and a room full of officers who still hadn't realized that the quiet human janitor among them was watching everything and remembering. The doors closed behind him with a hiss, sealing in the scent of polish and ozone. The faint vibration beneath his feet told him the Unity Dawn was shifting course, heading toward whatever waited beyond the stars. Marcus smiled to himself. The universe, it seemed, was about to get messy again. The conference chamber aboard the Unity Dawn hummed with restrained tension. Transparent walls offered a panoramic view of the stars, but no one looked at them. The air was thick with authority and ego, the scent of too many empires crowded into a single room. Admiral Carthvun loomed near the center table, his scaled hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on a holographic projection of shifting red markers. Around him, officers from half a dozen species argued in clipped tones, each insisting their doctrine was superior. Marcus Hale stood near the edge of the room, crouched over a console that flickered with static. His mop bucket had been left outside the door, forbidden in the sanctum of high command. He'd been called to repair a malfunctioning hollow emitter, though it was clear none of the commanders saw him as more than a servant. He worked silently, a ghost at the periphery of power, eyes down but ears open. The Zorathi advance is exaggerated, declared Commander Zith, her voice thin and sharp. The Vashran officer's translucent skin glowed faintly beneath the lights, the veins within pulsing like threads of electricity. Scouts report only scattered incursions. My fleets will hold the border. Carthvun snorted. Your fleets couldn't hold a meteor shower, Commander. The Zorathi consume everything they touch. If we wait, There will be nothing left to defend. You exaggerate, Zith hissed, her tendrils bristling. Perhaps, the Admiral replied, his tone icy. But exaggeration keeps soldiers alive. Arrogance buries them. Marcus adjusted a circuit panel, listening. The swarm again. The same old argument, playing out in different languages among different faces. Every alliance war council started this way. Too many leaders, too few listeners. Captain Riggs stood off to one side, watching the exchange with visible fatigue. He caught Marcus's eye, just for a moment, and raised a brow. Marcus gave a subtle shrug before returning to his work. Human captain. Carthfun barked suddenly, turning toward Riggs. Your species is young and reckless. Tell me, why do humans insist on spreading fear? Every report we receive from your colonies drips with hysteria. Riggs folded his arms. Because we've fought them before, Admiral. We know what they do to a planet's surface. And yet, Zith interjected, you still lost half your systems. Perhaps your experience isn't worth as much as your caution. A ripple of laughter moved through the alien ranks. Marcus didn't look up, but his jaw tightened. The sound reminded him of command tents filled with politicians who'd never seen the smoke of battle. The emitter should be working now, he said quietly, stepping back from the console. His voice barely carried over the noise. No one acknowledged him. Carthfun gestured irritably at the hologram. Then explain this, Captain. Our sensors show the Zorathi fleets have changed course. Why would they move toward neutral space unless? The hologram flickered violently, cutting him off. Lines of red code cascaded across the display, symbols dissolving into static. The lights dimmed. The room fell into a sudden, uneasy silence. Marcus froze, watching the flicker intensify. This wasn't a hardware fault. The system was under attack. What is happening? Zith demanded. Restore the feed. The tech officers scrambled, fingers darting over consoles. The hologram blinked once more, then went black. A dull alarm began to pulse in the walls, low, rhythmic, almost hesitant, like the heartbeat of something uncertain whether it should be afraid. Carthfun roared. Security breach. Find the source. Riggs was already moving toward the nearest console. It's not local, he said. Something's overriding from the command grid. Marcus dropped to one knee beside the wall panel, his hands moving without hesitation. They're inside the network, he muttered, accessing a bypass. We've got less than a minute before the failsafes trip. Carthfun spun toward him. You. Step away from that system. You are not authorized to. Marcus entered a command string that flickered across the wall in blue light, overriding 2 security locks and forcing the room's systems into manual mode. The alarm stopped. Power stabilized. The hologram reappeared, though its map now displayed a single, pulsing red point, right in the center of their own fleet formation. Override successful, Marcus said calmly. Your intruder was trying to loop your defense network into a shutdown sequence. I isolated the node. Zitha's voice trembled with indignation. You dare tamper with command systems? You're a cleaner, not an engineer. Riggs turned sharply. He's a little more than that, Commander. The alien officers looked between them, confusion thickening the air. Carthfun's golden eyes narrowed. Explain yourself. Riggs approached Marcus, his tone measured. This man's name is Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Hale. Human Expeditionary Command, Special Operations Division. He served during the Orion conflicts and the first Zorathi incursion. You're alive right now because he knows how to stop an infiltration before it starts. The room fell still. The weight of the revelation pressed down like gravity. Marcus stood slowly, his expression unreadable. I just fix things when they break, sir, he said, brushing dust from his hands. Carthfun stared at him, then at the console he'd just stabilized. Why would someone of rank perform maintenance? Because it's quieter, Marcus replied. And because no one argues with the janitor. A few officers shifted uneasily. Others glared, unwilling to concede that they'd been shown up by a man holding a wrench instead of a weapon. Riggs glanced at the hologram. Whoever breached the system wasn't random. The Zorathi are probing command vessels now. That red mark. He tapped the display. Is a beacon. They've tagged us. The Admiral's scales rippled in agitation. You're saying they can find us through our own systems? Already did, Marcus said. And they'll be here soon. No one laughed this time. A voice came through the intercom, sharp and urgent. Bridge to conference chamber. Unidentified contacts emerging from warp field, bearing 317. Multiple hostiles. Riggs swore under his breath. Of course they waited until we were in session. Carthvon rounded on Marcus. If what you say is true, janitor, then you will earn your title today. Prepare your species' defenses. We will see if humanity's fear is justified. Marcus looked at him, calm as ever. You'll get your proof, Admiral. Let's just hope it's not too expensive. He strode toward the door, retrieving his maintenance pad from the console. The holographic map continued to pulse behind him, the red beacon throbbing like a warning heart. As he stepped into the corridor, Riggs caught up beside him. You always pick the worst times to be right. Occupational hazard, Marcus said, eyes forward. The hum of the engines deepened, signaling the ship's shift to battle alert. Lights dimmed to crimson. The captain glanced sideways. You think they'll listen to you now? Marcus allowed himself a thin smile. They don't have to listen. They'll see soon enough. The deck shuddered under their feet as the Unity Dawn turned toward its enemy. Marcus tapped his pad once, bringing up a string of encrypted commands. Somewhere deep in the ship's systems, long-dormant protocols stirred awake. He slipped the pad into his pocket. Time to clean up again, he murmured, as the first tremors of combat rippled through the hull. The first impact struck like a thunderclap, rattling every deck of the Unity Dawn. Red emergency lighting bled across the corridors, and the ship's internal alarms wailed in overlapping languages. Marcus Hale braced himself against the wall, feeling the pulse of the ship beneath his hand. The vibration was steady but erratic, damage along the lower hull, maybe the portside shields faltering. He'd seen enough battles to recognize the rhythm of panic behind the hum of machinery. Status. Captain Riggs's voice echoed through the corridor, sharp and controlled. He emerged from the lift surrounded by officers shouting into comlinks that no longer worked. Marcus fell in beside him, matching his pace. Primary defense grid is compromised. That breach we stopped was just the first wave. They tagged the command core before we cut them out. Riggs cursed under his breath. So they've got targeting data. On the entire fleet, Marcus said. The next tremor rolled through the hull, stronger than before. Bulkheads groaned. A shower of sparks rained from a ruptured conduit, scattering over the polished floor Marcus had cleaned just hours earlier. He couldn't help noticing how quickly perfection decayed. When they reached the command deck, the air was chaos made visible. Officers shouted across stations, displays blinked with cascading data failures, and the massive viewport flickered between tactical overlays and the real scene outside, a boiling field of energy fire. The Zorathi ships were not elegant. They were living fortresses, organic armor plating fused with technology, each one a scarred monument to their hunger. Admiral Carthvon stood in the center of the room, barking orders that no one seemed able to follow. Recalibrate the forward batteries. Divert all power to weapons. Why are shields not responding? A Rekthar technician stammered something about network failures, but the Admiral silenced him with a growl. Marcus moved toward the central console, scanning the failing systems. You're rerouting through a compromised node, he said evenly. You'll overload the conduits before the weapons even charge. Carthvon spun, his eyes flashing with rage. You will not give orders here. I'm not giving orders, Marcus replied. I'm stopping you from blowing up your own flagship. Riggs stepped forward, intercepting the Admiral's fury. Let him work. He knows the system better than anyone here. You dare defend this custodian? Riggs didn't blink. He's the only one in this room who's ever fought the Zorathi and lived. The words hung there, sharp and undeniable. Marcus bypassed the damaged circuits, fingers moving in precise rhythm. The consoles flickered, steadied, then bloomed to life as control partially returned. On the main display, tactical data began to flow again, enemy ships closing fast, the rest of the fleet scattered and disorganized. Comms are still down, Marcus said. We're isolated. Zith, pale and trembling, hissed. Then we are finished. Not yet, Marcus answered. There's still manual control. He pulled up an ancient command interface buried beneath the layers of alien software, a relic of the ship's earliest design. Most of the Unity Dawn systems had been hybridized, but the human engineers had left a skeleton key deep inside the architecture, something the aliens considered obsolete. Marcus had written part of it himself years ago, under a different name and with a much higher rank. Riggs recognized the display instantly. You're pulling the old override? It's faster than asking permission. The Admiral's voice dripped with venom. You will explain yourself, human. Marcus didn't look up. You want a command? You've got it. Just not the kind you think. The override activated. Across the deck, consoles rebooted, rerouting control to a single source. Marcus's maintenance pad vibrated, syncing with a command grid. Every defensive battery on the ship aligned. What have you done? Zith demanded. Taken the janitor's keys, Marcus said. Now let's clean house. Outside the viewport, the Unity Dawn's guns roared to life. Energy beams lanced through the void, carving into the Zorathi vanguard. The shockwave from the first explosion rippled through the debris field, scattering organic fragments like shards of glass. For the first time since the attack began, the crew froze, not in fear, but in astonishment. Karthvun stepped closer, his massive frame looming over Marcus. How do you have access to this protocol? Marcus keyed in another series of commands, eyes fixed on the display. Because I wrote it. Riggs watched the Admiral's disbelief turn to dawning comprehension. Meet Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Hale, he said quietly. Or, as the old war logs call him, Iron Spectre. Zitha's voice wavered. That name is myth. A ghost code used during the Orion sieges. Not myth, Marcus said. Just retired. The ship lurched as another wave of plasma struck the hull, dragging everyone back to the present. Marcus steadied himself and began coordinating fire patterns manually. The crew hesitated, looking toward their alien superiors for confirmation, but none came. The hierarchy had cracked, and instinct took over. They obeyed the voice that sounded calm amid the storm. Target clusters delta through echo. Narrow the beam focus by 10 degrees. If they breach the forward hull, vent sections 3 through 6. Orders flowed, and the crew moved. Riggs coordinated from the comms relay, shouting corrections over the noise. Slowly, impossibly, the chaos began to coalesce into rhythm. The Zorathi ships pressed closer, their organic armor pulsing with toxic light. Marcus watched the readings climb. They're adapting. We've got about 5 minutes before they shift frequencies. Then we ended in 4, Riggs said. Marcus nodded, pulling data from his pad into the main system. He rerouted every available reactor channel into the rail batteries, straining the ship's core to its limit. The deck hummed with dangerous energy. Karthvun stared, torn between outrage and awe. You will destroy us all. Only if I miss, Marcus replied. The Unity Dawn's primary cannon ignited, a beam so bright it carved the darkness into white fire. It tore through the largest Zorathi vessel, splitting its carapace in half. The resulting shockwave hurled debris across the field, tearing lesser ships apart. The bridge erupted in light and sound, then fell silent except for the soft crackle of the consoles recalibrating. Riggs exhaled, shoulders slumping. That'll buy us time. Marcus's hands stilled over the controls. For now. Outside, the remnants of the enemy fleet retreated into the void, vanishing into fold space. The Unity Dawn drifted amid the glowing remains, its hull scorched but intact. Karthvun turned toward Marcus slowly, the weight of realization heavy in his movements. All this time you hid among us. Marcus leaned back from the console, his face unreadable. Not hiding. Cleaning. He gestured toward the viewport where shattered ships drifted like dust motes. Same job, bigger mess. The Admiral lowered his gaze, pride struggling against newfound respect. Your kind are dangerous. Only when we have to be, Marcus said. Riggs clapped a hand on his shoulder. Never thought I'd see you take command again. Neither did I, Marcus admitted. But someone has to keep the place from falling apart. For a moment, the bridge was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of systems stabilizing. Then a transmission crackled through the recovered comms, distorted, faint, but unmistakably human. This is Fleet Command to Unity Dawn. Enemy forces regrouping beyond range. Prepare for counteroffensive. Marcus looked at Riggs, then at the Admiral. Looks like the cleanup's not over. He turned back to the console, eyes reflecting the dim light of the burning stars, already planning the next move as the alarms began to sound again. Smoke curled through the fractured air of the command deck, drifting like ghosts among the dimming lights. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was brittle, as if the ship itself held its breath. The Unity Dawn hung scarred in orbit above a dying moon, her hull marred by plasma burns and gouged plating. Every sound, the crackle of damaged conduits, the distant thrum of emergency generators, felt too loud in the aftermath of survival. Marcus Hale stood near the main viewport, watching debris drift in the void. The remnants of the Zorathi fleet scattered like ashes on a solar wind, but he knew better than to mistake retreat for defeat. They would return. They always did. He rested a hand on the glass, feeling the faint vibration beneath his palm, the heartbeat of a ship not yet dead. Behind him, Captain Riggs approached, limping slightly, uniform singed and torn. Damage reports are still coming in. We lost the port batteries, half the life support grid, and 3 squadrons. But we're alive. Marcus nodded without turning. Alive is good. Alive means we can fix it. Riggs gave a weary laugh. You haven't changed, Chief. You treat the galaxy like it's just one more mess to mop up. It usually is. Marcus finally looked over, meeting his old friend's eyes. What's the crew status? Shaken, Riggs said. The aliens are quiet. They don't know what to make of you. Carthvun's been pacing for 10 minutes straight. I think he's trying to decide whether to thank you or arrest you. Let him pace, Marcus said softly. He's not the first officer to choke on pride. As if summoned by the words, Admiral Carthvun emerged from the haze, his uniform scorched, his golden scales dulled by soot. The alien's eyes locked on Marcus, unreadable. You have cost me control of my command, he said, his tone low but steady. And yet, without your interference, none of us would still be breathing. I can live with that paradox, Marcus said. The Admiral studied him for a long moment. You disobeyed protocol, overrode restricted systems, and took command of an Alliance flagship. Technically, Marcus replied, I just cleaned up the mess you couldn't. For an instant, silence pressed between them like a drawn blade. Then, to Marcus's faint surprise, Carthvun's rigid posture softened. You humans are insufferable, he said, a note of reluctant admiration coloring the words. And perhaps indispensable. I'll take that as a compliment, Marcus said. Riggs leaned against a railing, wincing at his leg. You should. It's probably the closest you'll ever get from him. A faint smile ghosted across Marcus's face, but it faded quickly. His eyes drifted to the tactical display, still flickering with residual data. They're regrouping out there, he murmured. The Zorathi don't retreat unless they're setting bait. That beacon they planted wasn't just for targeting, it was a tracker. They've marked the Unity Dawn as a priority kill. Riggs frowned. Meaning we're not done. Marcus tapped the console, magnifying a faint signature just beyond the sensor perimeter. A formation was emerging, dozens of ships, maybe hundreds. The survivors of the swarm were coalescing into something larger, darker, and far too organized. The bridge lights flickered as power rerouted automatically, systems struggling to recover from the previous assault. Officers scrambled, voices low and uncertain. Fear had returned, whispering through the ranks like static. Carthvun stared at the readings. Impossible. They were crippled. Crippled things bite hardest, Marcus said. You'd know that if you'd ever been cornered. Riggs's voice was steady but grim. We don't have the strength for another round. Marcus's gaze hardened. Then we make it count. He moved toward the main console again, his fingers already calling up command sequences. Karthvun stepped forward, alarm flashing across his features. You can't. Our reactors are unstable. A second offensive will tear the ship apart. Better to choose how we go down than wait for them to decide, Marcus replied. His tone was calm, but his hands moved with practiced urgency. There's one last failsafe buried in the design. The Unity Dawn can detonate her main core and trigger a gravitational implosion. It'll take the swarm with her. Riggs's face went pale. That'll destroy the ship and everyone on board. Marcus didn't answer immediately. The screens around him reflected in his eyes, cold and distant. Some things are worth cleaning completely. Karthvun lunged forward, claws gripping the console. You will not sacrifice this vessel. Then you stop them, Marcus said. Go ahead. Rally your fleet. Tell them to form up, to hold the line. I'll delay the swarm as long as I can. The Admiral froze, the weight of the choice pressing visibly upon him. He was proud, but not stupid. He saw the truth written across the data. The Unity Dawn was finished, but her destruction could save millions. Riggs's hand fell on Marcus's shoulder. You don't have to do this alone, Chief. Marcus turned, the ghost of a smile on his lips. I was never really alone, Captain. You just didn't see it. For a heartbeat, the two men regarded each other in silence, soldiers from a war that had never truly ended. Then Riggs stepped back, understanding the decision even as it burned him to accept it. Karthvun barked orders in his native tongue. All personnel to escape craft. Command transfer to auxiliary fleet control. Move. The bridge erupted in motion. Officers hurried to evacuation routes, systems flickering under the strain of rerouting command authority. Marcus watched them go, his expression unreadable. He keyed in the final sequence, locking out secondary control access. Only his biometrics could complete the activation now. Riggs lingered by the lift, voice rough. You sure you want to do this? Marcus looked out at the stars, where the dark wave of Zorathi ships loomed like a storm on the horizon. Every janitor knows when it's time to take out the trash. Riggs laughed once, quietly, and saluted. Fair winds, Chief. Marcus returned the gesture. Keep the decks clean, Captain. The lift closed, carrying Riggs and the last of the crew away. The bridge grew still. The hum of the core deepened, vibrating through the floor like the growl of a sleeping beast. Marcus entered the final override and stepped to the viewport. The approaching swarm filled the void, a living tide of death closing in. He took a slow breath. This one's for the record books. His hand came down on the console. The ship's systems screamed in protest as the containment fields collapsed inward. Light flared, consuming everything in a heartbeat, a miniature star igniting where the Unity Dawn once floated. The gravitational pulse expanded, dragging the Zorathi fleet into its heart, crushing them in a silent implosion that left only darkness in its wake. When the light faded, the stars returned, cold, distant, unblinking. Hours later, rescue ships found the drifting escape pods. Riggs was among the survivors. When the Admiralty questioned him, he gave the same answer every time. There was no janitor on the Unity Dawn, he said. There was a soldier who never stopped cleaning up everyone else's mess. And somewhere, in the endless quiet between stars, the legend of Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Hale, the man the galaxy had mistaken for a janitor, took on a life of its own, whispered with awe and a trace of fear. Humanity's ghost in the machine, the one who laughed softly as the universe burned clean.